A Compendium on the Soul by Ibn Sina, written for a prince who valued wisdom above all else. Ibn Sina aims to explore the complex nature of the soul, a topic he finds to be obscure and difficult to understand, even after studying the works of other scholars. This summary, like the original compendium, has 10 sections. Section 1. To establish the existence of the spiritual faculties, the detailed analysis of which I have undertaken. To understand the soul, one must first understand that it exists. It is not enough to simply describe it, we must establish its reality. Imagine the universe as an ocean. Within this ocean, there are whirlpools of matter, temporary patterns of energy we call bodies. These bodies are subject to the constant flux and flow of the universe, just like waves on the ocean's surface. Some bodies, however, move in ways that cannot be explained by the simple laws of physics. They exhibit a kind of motion that transcends the purely mechanical, a motion driven by something beyond the material. This something is the soul. Think of a plant reaching for the sun or a bird soaring through the sky. These actions are not simply the result of physical forces, they are expressions of a deeper, more fundamental principle. This principle is life itself, the animating force that pervades all living things. This life force, this soul, is not a separate entity, distinct from the body. It is the body's very essence, the organizing principle that gives it form and function. Just as a whirlpool is not separate from the water, so too is the soul inseparable from the body. Just as a whirlpool cannot exist without water, the soul cannot exist without a body. It is the body's animating force, the invisible essence that gives it life. To understand the soul, therefore, we must study the body, for it is through the body that the soul expresses itself. Section 2, of the division of the spiritual faculties and their classification into 3 main classes, and the definition of the soul in a general way. Within this dance of the universe, we observe a fascinating hierarchy of beings, each more complex than the last. At the most basic level, we have plants, those quiet, unmoving beings that nevertheless possess a spark of life. They are able to nourish themselves and grow, driven by an unseen force that propels them ever onwards. Then, we have animals, those creatures of instinct and impulse, forever driven by their desires. They too share the plant's ability to nourish themselves and grow, but they go beyond this, expressing life through movement and sensation. Imagine a fish darting through a coral reef, its senses alive to every current and color. This is the animal soul in all its glory. Finally, we arrive at humans, those self-aware beings capable of contemplating their place within the cosmic dance. Like animals, they possess the powers of growth, sensation, and movement, but they go further still. They possess the power of reason, the ability to abstract and generalize, to form concepts and ideas. This is the speaking soul, the aspect of our being that sets us apart and allows us to understand not only the world around us, but also ourselves. This hierarchy is not a rigid ladder, but rather a flowing continuum. Each level of existence contains within it the seeds of the level above. The plant soul, in its simple striving for growth, foreshadows the animal's desire for food and movement. The animal soul, in its instinctual awareness, hints at the human capacity for reason and reflection. The universe, it seems, delights in unfolding ever greater complexity from within its depths. It is a process of constant becoming, a never-ending journey of self-discovery. And within this journey, the soul plays a central and indispensable role. Section 3. To establish that not one of the faculties of the soul originates out of a combination, blending, of the elements, but on the contrary comes upon them from outside. Could the soul simply be a result of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, crashing together in a chaotic cacophony? Surely something more profound, something transcendent, must be at play. Let's explore this by imagining 3 scenarios. The weak blend. Imagine mixing a potent bitter aloe with subtly sweet honey. The result? A slightly less bitter concoction, the original flavors diluted. Could the soul be such a watered-down compromise, a mere shadow of the elements it supposedly derives from? This seems implausible, for the soul's symphony of emotions and thoughts is far richer than a mere blend of basic elements. The stalemate. Picture now combining those same elements in perfect balance. Their individual properties would cancel each other out, resulting in a stagnant, inert mass. Is this what our soul is, a lifeless equilibrium, devoid of all movement and dynamism? Of course not. Our inner world teems with movement. Desires surge, thoughts race, emotions ebb and flow. This constant interplay would be impossible in a state of perfect elemental balance. The imprint from beyond. Now envision pressing a seal into clay. The intricate design imprinted bears no resemblance to the clay itself. It's a pattern from beyond, a form imposed from outside. Could the soul be such an imprint, a divine spark igniting the inert matter of our being? This idea resonates with the essence of our being, for our capacity for love, creativity, and spiritual yearning transcends the limitations of the material world. Ibn Sina suggests that the soul isn't a product of the elements, but rather a force that enters them, shaping and animating them from beyond. It's the conductor of our personal orchestra, orchestrating the elements into a harmonious whole. Just as the sun's rays illuminate the world, allowing us to perceive its beauty, so too does the divine essence illuminate our souls, awakening within us the capacity for thought, feeling, and conscious awareness. Section 4. Specification of the vegetable, plant powers, and mention of the need there is for each one of them. Consider the plant, a humble life form that does not frantically seek sustenance, but patiently, rhythmically, draws nourishment and flourishes. This embodies the essence of the vegetative soul, a force fundamental to all living things, even humans. There are three core principles of this vegetative soul: the nutritive, the growth-promoting, and the propagating. The nutritive, as its name suggests, is the foundation upon which life is sustained. Like a flowing river replenishing the earth, it continuously replenishes the body, compensating for the inevitable wear and tear of existence. The growth-promoting power, akin to the steady, unhurried unfolding of a flower bud, guides the organism toward its full potential, always working in harmony with the rhythm of nature. Finally, the propagating power embodies the impulse to create, to carry life forward in an endless process of renewal. This impulse is not separate from the previous two, but rather the culmination of their harmonious interplay. Think of it this way: a grand symphony needs not only instruments and a melody, but also a conductor to guide and shape the music. The propagating power is that conductor, setting the tempo and directing the orchestra of the nutritive and growth-promoting powers. This vegetative soul, this vital force, is a constant reminder that we are inextricably woven into the fabric of the cosmos. It is a dance of receiving and transforming, growing and giving back, a microcosm of the universe itself. Section 5. Specification of the animal powers, and mention of the need there is for each one of them. An animal, a being of instinct and motion, driven by primal urges yet guided by an innate wisdom. Unlike the quiet growth of the plant, the animal engages directly with the world, navigating a vibrant landscape of sensation and impulse. This dynamic interplay lies at the heart of the animal soul. Its 5 outward senses act as guides, much like scouts venturing into unknown territory, relaying information about the world back to the animal. Touch, the most primal of these senses, alerts the animal to danger and guides it towards sustenance. Taste helps discern nourishment from harm, while smell acts as a beacon, drawing the animal towards sustenance from afar. Sight, with its panoramic view, allows the animal to navigate a world of light and shadow, avoiding hazards and perceiving opportunities. Hearing, through its subtle vibrations, alerts the animal to both the beauty and the danger in its surroundings. These sensory experiences, however, would be fleeting and useless without the inward senses that process and interpret them. The picturing power, like an artist capturing the essence of a fleeting moment, preserves the forms of things perceived by the senses. The remembering or preserving power stores the significance of these experiences. Let's use the analogy of a kingdom to illustrate the interconnectedness of these faculties. The motion-promoting power acts as the ruler, driven by the primal urges of lust and hate. The 5 senses are its messengers, venturing forth to gather intelligence. The perceptive power acts as a grand vizier, collecting and interpreting the messages from the senses. The imagining power, like a swift courier, relays this information between the vizier and the ruler. Finally, the conjecturing power, serving as a trusted advisor, helps the ruler discern truth from illusion and make sound judgments. This interplay of perception, memory, and impulse highlights the essential nature of the animal soul, a force that allows living beings to not only exist, but to thrive. It reminds us that life is not merely about passive existence, but about active engagement with the world, driven by a primal wisdom that seeks both survival and fulfillment. Section 6. Treating in detail of the five senses and of how they perceive. Consider, if you will, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. He believed that our eyes do not perceive the world directly, but rather through an interplay of light and reflection. Imagine a pool of still water reflecting the world above. Just as the water's surface captures the image of the sky, so too does the crystalline lens of the eye capture the forms of the world around us. But sight is just one instrument. Hearing, for example, relies not on light, but on the rhythmic vibrations of air. Like the gentle strumming of a harp, each sound creating ripples of energy that wash over us. These vibrations, upon reaching our ears, set in motion a chain reaction, ultimately transmitting their message to the depths of our awareness. And what of smell, that most evocative of senses? Here, Ibn Sina explains, the world announces itself through subtle aromas carried on the air we breathe. Think of the delicate fragrance of a flower, the earthy aroma of freshly tilled soil, each scent a unique signature, whispering tales of the world from whence it came. These aromas are drawn into our noses, where they impress themselves upon our senses, painting vivid pictures in the theater of our minds. Taste, too, involves a transformation, a subtle alchemy that occurs when flavors dissolve upon our tongues. This process is not merely about registering chemical compounds, but about experiencing the essence of a thing, its fundamental nature. Each flavor, then, becomes a story, a tale of sweetness, bitterness, sourness, or salt that unfolds upon the palate. Finally, we come to touch, the most primal and fundamental of our senses. It is through touch that we encounter the world directly, feeling its textures, temperatures, and contours. This sense is not merely about receiving passive impressions, but about actively engaging with the world, exploring its nuances and complexities. Through touch, we become one with our surroundings. This intricate exploration of the senses reminds us that perception is not a passive process, but an active engagement with the world, a dialogue that unfolds moment by moment. Section 7. Dealing in detail with the inward senses and the motion-promoting powers. Ibn Sina describes the internal senses as a hidden world within us. They are the unseen hands that shape the raw materials of sensation, the silent partners in the dance of awareness. One of these hidden senses is the common sense, not to be confused with our everyday understanding of practicality or good judgment. Rather, the common sense is the great unifier, the sense that gathers together the fragmented perceptions of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and weaves them into a coherent whole. It is through the common sense that we perceive a yellow substance as honey, recognizing its sweetness, aroma, and texture simultaneously. Without the common sense, the Ibn Sina suggests, our perceptions would remain a chaotic jumble of unrelated sensations. Next, Ibn Sina introduces us to the imagination, a faculty that plays with the forms gathered by the common sense, rearranging them into novel and fantastical combinations. The imagination knows no bounds. It is the realm of dreams and daydreams, of creative leaps and flights of fancy. While the common sense deals only in realities, the imagination is free to explore the impossible, to paint with colors that do not exist. However, there is a faculty that cautions us against mistaking imagination for truth. This is where the conjecturing faculty comes in, a sense of discernment that weighs the creations of the imagination and judges them to be true or false. It is the conjecturing faculty that allows us to distinguish between a mirage and an oasis, between a dream and waking reality. Finally, no discussion of the internal senses would be complete without mentioning memory, the storehouse of our experiences. A repository of images, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures from our past. It is through memory that we learn, that we recognize familiar faces and places, and that we build a sense of continuity in our lives. Memory is not merely a passive recording of events, but an active process of reconstruction and reinterpretation. The human mind relies on both the external senses and the internal senses to make sense of the world. It is in the interplay of the seen and the unseen, the outer and the inner, that the spectrum of human experience unfolds. Section 8. A sketch of the human soul from the starting point whence it sets out until the end point whither it reaches its perfection. Ibn Sina describes the human experience as an unfolding journey, the potential of our being, and the actualization of our experiences. We are not born with fully formed minds, but rather with the capacity to learn, grow, and develop. There are two key pathways through which our minds acquire knowledge. The first is a kind of divine intuition, a direct knowing that bypasses the need for logical reasoning or sensory experience. This intuitive understanding is often associated with self-evident truths, such as the understanding that the whole is greater than a part. The second pathway to knowledge is more grounded in our earthly experiences. Through observation, experimentation, and reasoning, we construct frameworks of understanding, gradually piecing it together. This process involves categorizing and differentiating, analyzing and synthesizing, drawing upon the raw data of our senses to arrive at more abstract and universal concepts. However, our journey toward knowledge is not solely a product of individual effort. Just as an artist draws inspiration from the world around them, our minds draw upon the richness of both sensory experience and intuitive insight. Section 9, in which the proofs of the essentiality of the soul and of its independence of body and its structure are set forth in pursuance of the method of logicians. Ibn Sina in Section 9 presents a compelling case for the existence of the soul as an entity distinct from the body, much like a dancer who exists independently of their costume. It is not the physical form that makes the dancer, but the invisible essence that animates their movements. One of the central arguments presented is the observation that we, as human beings, possess the remarkable ability to grasp universal concepts, like the idea of human or animal. These concepts are not simply aggregates of sensory experiences. Rather, they are pure, indivisible forms that reside in a realm beyond the reach of the physical senses. Think of a form fitting a divisible object. Just as a glove perfectly conforms to the shape of a hand, a universal form must also be divisible to accommodate the multitude of individuals it represents. However, the parts of this divided form do not lose their connection to the whole. This is akin to how a single ray of sunlight, when refracted through a prism, breaks down into a spectrum of colors, each one still inherently connected to the original source of light. If these universal forms were indeed rooted in the physical body, they would be subject to the limitations of the material world. Just as the body weakens and deteriorates with age, so too would our capacity for abstract thought if it were merely a function of the physical brain. Yet experience shows that our intellectual capacities can continue to grow and refine even as our bodies decline. This leads to the assertion that the rational, reasoning part of us cannot be confined to the realm of the physical. It must exist as an independent entity, an essence, capable of containing these infinite universal forms. This essence is the soul, a non-corporeal entity, much like the dancer who continues to exist even after the performance ends and the costume is shed. Section 10. To establish that there is a mental essence, distinct from bodies, which stands towards human souls in the stead of light toward sight, and in the stead of a source or fountain, and to establish that souls, if they leave the bodies, unite therewith. Take the human mind as a pristine canvas, void of any markings in its infancy. As we journey through life, this canvas becomes adorned with intricate patterns of understanding, self-evident truths that appear without conscious effort, like the axiom that the whole is greater than its part. These fundamental truths, these flashes of insight, are not merely products of sensory experience. Our senses, while valuable guides, are limited by their very nature. They reveal only fragments of reality, like pieces of a mosaic, never the complete picture. To perceive the inherent order of the universe, we must look beyond the realm of the tangible into the realm of pure thought. This is where the outflow comes in. a universal intelligence, a source of pure, unadulterated wisdom. Picture it as a radiant sun, constantly emanating beams of understanding. The human mind, like a prism catching sunlight, receives these beams and refracts them into individual thoughts and ideas. But here's the remarkable part. This outflow is not merely a source of information, it's a living essence, a realm of pure thought with which our minds can connect. And just as a plant, tethered to the earth, stretches towards the sun's life-giving energy, so too does the rational soul yearn for connection with this universal mind. Our earthly concerns, anxieties, desires, fleeting joys, act as distractions, veiling our perception of this profound truth. It's only when we quiet the chatter of the mundane, when we release our attachment to the material world, that we can truly commune with this higher intelligence. Death, in this context, is not an end, but a liberation. Freed from the confines of the physical body, the rational soul can fully immerse itself in the radiant light of the universal mind. A dancer, finally shedding a restrictive costume, able to move with newfound freedom and grace. This is the destiny of the rational soul, to exist eternally within the embrace of universal knowledge, a realm of infinite understanding and timeless wisdom. It's worth differentiating between the rational soul and other faculties like the animal or vegetable powers. Think of these as different facets of a multifaceted gem. The rational soul, in its pursuit of enlightenment, refines and absorbs the essence of these other powers, leaving behind the husks, the ephemeral aspects tied to the physical realm. Just as a seed carries within it the blueprint for a magnificent tree, the rational soul carries within it the distilled essence of its experiences, ready to blossom into its full potential in the afterlife.